Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says to do at each moment the best we can and leave the result to the Divine's decision is the surest way to peace, happiness, strength, progress, and final perfection. With our love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says in letters, in the book Letters on Yoga, volume 24, page 1095, the soul, the psychic being, is in direct touch with the divine truth, but it is hidden in man by the mind, vital, and the physical nature. One may practice integral yoga and get illuminations in the mind and the reason. One may conquer power and luxuriate in all kinds of experiences in the vital. One may establish even surprising physical siddhis. But if the true soul power behind does not manifest, if the psychic nature does not come into the front, nothing genuine has been done. Mind can be opened by itself to its own higher reaches. It can still itself and widen into the impersonal. It may too spiritualize itself in some kind of static liberation or nirvana. But the supramental cannot find a sufficient base in a spiritualized mind alone, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Now, let us read some of the selections of the works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo and our Divine Mother, compiled and introduced by A.S. Dalal in the book Emergence of the Psychic, Governance of Life by the Soul, topic Contact with the Psychic Being. These are the extracts taken from the works of our Divine Mother. Question, sweet mother. Usually it is the psychic that is revealed, correct? For this, our Divine Mother says, it is the outer consciousness that is not in contact with it, for it is turned towards, instead of being towards inwards, for its life, amidst all the external noises and movements, in what it sees, what it does, what it says, instead of looking within into the depths of the being and listening to the inner inspiration, says our Divine Mother. Question, sweet mother, you wrote to me that it is not easy to come in contact with the psychic being. Why do you consider it difficult, sweet mother? How should I begin? For this, our Divine Mother says, I said not easy because the contact is not spontaneous, it is voluntary. The psychic being has an influence on the thoughts and actions, but one is rarely conscious of it. To become conscious of the psychic being, one must want to do so, make one's mind as silent as possible, and enter deep into the heart of one's being, beyond sensations and thoughts.
My fate, only to live and love a while and die. For I know now why my spirit came on earth, and who I am, and who is I love. I have looked at him from my immortal self. I have seen God smile at me in Satyava. I have seen the eternal in a human face.
Our Divine Mother says, one must form the habit of silent concentration and descend into the depths of one's being. One must form the habit of silent concentration and descend into the depths of one's being. The discovery of the psychic being is a definite and very concrete fact, as all who have had the experience know about this. For this, the child says, Sweet mother, once the being has entered into contact with the psychic, why does the psychic again hide itself? For this, our Divine Mother says, it is not the psychic that hides itself. It is the being which returns to its ordinary consciousness. It is difficult for it to remain at its highest. One slides down, falls back. Only the second time the discovery is easier. And each time the road is easier until no longer one falls back. Question, sweet mother, once the psychic has come to the front, can it withdraw again? For this, our Divine Mother says, yes. Generally, one has a series of experiences of identification, very intense at first, which later gradually diminishes. And then one day, you find that they have disappeared. Still, you must not be disturbed, for it is quite a common phenomenon. But next time, the second time, the contact is more easily obtained. And then comes a moment which is not very far off, when as soon as one concentrates and aspires, one gets a contact. One may not have the power of keeping it all the time, but can get it at will. Then, from that moment, things become very easy. When one feels a difficulty or there is a problem to be solved, when one wants to make progress, or there is just a depression to conquer, or an obstacle to be overcome, or simply the joy of identification, for it is an experience that gives a very concrete joy at the moment of identification. One truly feels a very great joy. Then, at any moment, whatever, one may pause, concentrate for a while, and aspire. And quite naturally, the contact is established, and all problems which were to be solved are solved. Our Divine Mother says simply to concentrate, to sit down and concentrate, to aspire in this way, and the contact is made, so to say, instantaneously. Our Divine Mother says, there comes a time, as I said, when this does not leave you. That is, it is in the depths of the consciousness and supports all that you do, and you never lose the contact. then many things disappear. For instance, depression is one of these things. Discontentment, revolt, fatigue, depression, all these difficulties. If one makes it a habit to step back, as we say, in one's consciousness and see on the screen of one's psychic consciousness, see all the circumstances, all the events, all the ideas, all the knowledge, everything. At that moment, one sees that and has an altogether sure guide for everything that one may do. But this perforce takes a very long time to come, says our Divine Mother. Question, sweet mother, what is the meaning of the psychic opening in the physical consciousness? For this, our Divine Mother says, one can find the psychic through each part of the consciousness. You can find the psychic behind the physical. You can enter into contact with the psychic directly through the physical consciousness, directly through the vital consciousness, directly through the mental consciousness. It is not as though you had to cross all the states of the being in order to find the psychic. You can enter the psychic without leaving your physical consciousness through interiorization. Because it is not an ascent or gradation, it is an interiorization, and this interiorization can be done without passing through the other states of the being directly. Our Divine Mother says, this is what Sri Aurobindo means. You are in the physical consciousness. Nothing prevents you from opening this physical consciousness to the psychic consciousness. You don't need to develop vitally or mentally or return to these states of being in order to enter into contact with the psychic. You can enter directly. The psychic manifests itself directly in your physical without passing through the other states. That is what it means, says our Divine Mother. Question, sweet mother, I think one gets the psychic consciousness only when the psychic comes to the surface. For this, our Divine Mother says, or when one can go deep enough inside to enter into contact with one's own psychic being. Very often, when one touches certain parts of the mind which are under the psychic influence, and full light and the joy of that light, or when one touches certain very pure or high parts of the emotive being, which has the most generous, most unselfish emotions, one also has the impression of being in contact with one's soul. But this is not the true soul. It is not the soul in its very essence. These are the parts of the being under its influence and manifesting something of it. So, very often people enter into contact with these parts, and this gives them illuminations, great joy, revelations, and they feel they have found their soul. But it is only the part of the being under its influence, one part or another. Our Divine Mother says exactly what happens is that one touches these things, has experiences, And then it gets wheeled, and one wonders, how is that I touched my soul and now I have fallen back into this state of ignorance and inconscience? But that's because one had not touched one's soul. One had touched those parts of the being which are under the influence of the soul and manifest something of it, but are not it. Our Divine Mother says, I have already said many times that when one enters consciously into contact with one's soul and the union is established, it is over. It can no longer be undone. Let me repeat. When one enters consciously into contact with one's soul, the union is established. It is something permanent, constant, which resists everything, which at any moment, whatever, if referred to, can be found, whereas the other things, one can have the very fine experiences and then it gets wheeled again. And one tells oneself, how does this happen? I saw my soul now and I don't find it anymore. Our Divine Mother says it was not the soul one had seen. And these things are very beautiful and give you very impressive experience. But this is not the contact with the psychic being itself. Our Divine Mother says the contact with the psychic being is definitive. And it is about this that I say when people ask, do I have a contact with my psychic being? Your question itself proves that you don't have it, says our Divine Mother. Our Lord Aurobindo says, when the psychic being awakens, you grow conscious of your own soul, you know yourself, and you no longer commit the mistake of identifying yourself with the mental or the vital being. You do not mistake them for the soul. Second, when awakened, the psychic being gives true bhakti for God or for the Guru. That bhakti is quite different from mental or vital bhakti. In the mind, one may have admiration or appreciation for the intellectual greatness of the man or the Guru, but it is merely mental. It does not carry the matter very far. Of course, there is no harm in having that also. But by itself, it does not open the whole of the inner being. It only establishes a contact, a mental contact. The vital bhakti demands and demands, it imposes its own conditions. It surrenders itself to God, but conditionally. It says to God, "You're so great, I worship you. Now satisfy my desire. This ambition, this desire, or make me great, make me a great sadhak, a great yogin, etc." Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the unillumined mind also surrenders to the truth but makes it its own conditions. It says to the truth, "Satisfy my judgment and my opinion." It demands that the truth cast itself in the mind's own forms. The vital being also insists on the truth to throw itself into its own moment of force. The vital being pulls at the higher power and pulls at the vital being of the Guru. But the psychic being and its bhakti are not like that. Because it is in direct communication with the divine behind, it is capable of true bhakti. Psychic bhakti does not make any demand, makes no reservation. It is satisfied with its own existence. The psychic being knows how to obey the truth in the right way. It gives itself up truly to God or to the Guru because it can give itself up truly, therefore, it can only receive truly. Thirdly, when the psychic being comes to the surface, it feels sad when the mental or the vital being is making a fool of itself. That sadness is purity offended. When the mind is playing its own game, when the vital is carried away by its own impulses, it is the psychic being which says, "I don't want these things. What am I here for after all? I am here for the truth. I am not here for these things." Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says psychic sadness is again different from mental dissatisfaction or vital sadness or physical depression. If the psychic being is strong, it makes itself felt on all the parts of the being and forces them, compels them to change. But if it is weak, the other parts take advantage of it and use the psychic sadness to their own advantage. In some cases, the psychic being comes to the surface, upsets the mental or the vital being, and throws everything into disorder. But if the mind or the vital is stronger than the psychic, then it casts only an occasional influence and gradually retires behind. All its cry is the wilderness, and the mental and the vital being goes on in its own round. And Lord says, lastly, the psychic being refuses to be deceived by appearances. It is not carried away by falsehood. It refuses to be depressed by falsehood, nor does it exaggerate the truth. For example, even if everything around says there is no God, the psychic being refuses to believe in it. It says, I know because I feel. And because it knows the thing behind, it is not deceived by appearances. It immediately feels the force. And when the psychic being is awakened, it throws out all the dross from the emotional being and makes it free from sentimentalism or the lower play of emotionalism. But it does not carry in it the dryness of the mind or the exaggeration of the vital feelings. It gives just the touch to each emotion. Question: how can one know that the psychic being is in front, sweet mother? For this, our Divine Mother says, my child, when it happens, one understands. It is exactly so long as one doesn't understand that it means that it hasn't come. This is like people asking you, how can I know whether I'm in contact with the divine? That itself is enough to prove that they are not. For if they are, they can no longer ask this question. It is something understood. For the psychic is the same thing. When the psychic is in front, one knows it, and there is no possibility of any doubt. Consequently, one no longer asks this question, says our Divine Mother. And our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the signs of the psychic being coming forward is a central love, Bhakti, surrender, giving everything, a sight within that sees clearly what is spiritually right or wrong and automatically rejects the later. A moment of entire consecration and dedication of all in one to the Divine Mother, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo.